Women Express. I'm Denise Harrington, your host, and I'm here with Nia Harrington. We've been doing the mother-daughter podcast approach for the last several podcasts that we've done. This is kind of our new launch. It's a new year for Women Express. As you know, I've been doing women's leadership programs for over 20 years. It's been quite a long time. And it's an amazing thing to see some of the things that I was talking about 20 years ago are starting to come to fruition. This is our time. I've been saying that. But it's not only our time, it's the time for us to step into our power as women. And Women Express is a podcast all about stepping into our power and using our voices. We are on the precipice of seeing a woman take a leadership role of the most powerful country in the world. That is profound. It says, though, that the universe is positioning us as women to step into our leadership, not only roles, but models by using our skills, our ideas, our purposes, and bringing them to the table. Not just bringing them to the table, but also launching those ideas and making sure that those ideas are heard by as many people as possible. I also believe that this is a time for us to power up and to circle one another in community to support as we rise as women leaders. You've heard, I've heard, and experienced what it feels like to be one of the first women leaders. Any kind of first as a woman, it's lonely. So I believe it's time for us to not only stand in our power, but to circle one another as we stand in our power for support. For that conversation and for that idea, I've chosen two very powerful women to talk to us today, to help us power up in one of the most important spaces, and that is how we build community with different approaches, with different skin tones, with different ways of being, different creeds, different parts of the world. How do we come to the table in this kind of diversity and see each other, speak to each other, and accept each other's voices? I do believe that that is quite a challenge, because when we come to the table, we come with our different biases that we don't even know about. And we come to the table with some things that are rooted in racism on all sides of the fence, not just one side of the fence. I think that you guys would agree. And the bottom line is how do we hit those walls, transcend them, expand them, improve them, and move on to building a better community? Women are good at building community and relationships. So that's our focus for today. I want to introduce you to Christine Platt. Yeah, hey. Please, because we have four people on today. And Catherine Wigginton Greene. And her last name is my maiden name with an E. I was Denise Greene Harrington. I have an E on the end of my name as well. So we're probably cousins of some way, of some sort. And in our world, that is not an impossibility. And that's what this whole conversation today is all about. Both of them bring some incredible credentials. You all know that I'm not a big bio reader. I don't do that. But I can tell you one thing about Miss Platt at the very top is that she is working in some spaces that are just incredible. This whole thing of the idea of, I love it, Afro-minimalism, that's incredible. How do we take our cultural awareness and authenticity and bring the Black voice and experience to the table? And I think you do that incredibly well.
Thank you.
She's really into authenticity, and so it'll be great to hear from your perspective on that, and intentional living, which we all are trying to do. And I think that that's what that community idea of coming to the table with all of our stuff and helping each other to expand and grow. Yeah. Catherine, my partner here, yay! She's done a lot of work in stage production, and she's done documentaries. There's great workshops around, this one I love, how does that say?
Was it something I
Was it
said?
Was it
something?
something I said? I love that. I love
I love
that.
the documentary title too. I'm not racist, am I?
Am I?
Yeah.
I'm not
Am I?
racist.
Ooh,
Am I?
what?
And as you can see, we're taking on a big topic because there's so much division in our world today. Taking on this kind of topic, I think, is essential, especially when we talk about women's power. And I think that these two women can bring it to us in a way that we can transform with ease. We can do it with embracing one another, and we can do it even with a smile that will make a difference in our power.
Mhm.
So, welcome,
Yes.
both of you. Nia
Thank
Welcome.
is going to
you.
introduce something special about these two women as well.
Yes, thank you, thank you. And we're going to dive in here quickly into this book because, wow, where to begin? First, this year I'm personally doing a 50 book challenge. So I'm trying to read 50 books
Ah.
this year. You guys, I think we're my book number 40.
Ooh, okay.
Yes, I was very excited to have the opportunity to get to read for work outside of, the professional growth books that are out there, mental health, all that kind of stuff, self-help. This one, first of all, it gets you right away with the title. So you kind of look at it and you're like, Rebecca, Not Becky. What
Oh, I
is
got to bring it
this
down here.
going to be about? It's this, it's I think you guys did such a great job, and I'll read a little bit about what the book is about before we jump into it. But I think that there is this dynamic energy within this book. It's covering a deep and tough topic with a lot of levity and fun. It's a little silly. So I think it's interesting because it really does push that kind of that the dynamics of black and white, hard and easy. It really kind of pushes you as a reader throughout the whole time of those two things. Like, is this supposed to be funny? Is this supposed to be serious? Like, it's really great dynamic. But Rebecca Not Becky explores the themes of race, privilege, and friendship, focusing on the complex relationship between two women, DeAndrea.
Mhm.
I'm getting
Good
saying it
old
right.
DeAndrea.
Don't say it wrong.
Andrea.
DeAndrea Whitman, a Black woman who moves with her family to a predominantly white suburb, and Rebecca Myland, not to be confused with Being Becky, a well-meaning but overly eager white woman. The novel unpacks the dynamics of racial tension, social awkwardness, and the performative aspects of allyship, especially in the context of motherhood and community involvement. So let's dive in. I think first, my question to both of you is what brought you two together and
Yeah.
how did you decide to write this book, co-author as well? Where did it begin?
Sure. I'll start. So at the time when Catherine and I met, I was working as the managing director of the Anti-Racist Research and Policy Center at American University. And we were getting ready for the first National Anti-Racist Book Festival. And I heard about this amazing documentary called I Am Not Racist, Am I? And had a chance to meet Catherine and Andre Lee, her co-producer of the film, right? And they came to the center and we just hit it off right away. And I remember at the time saying, like, that's a cool white girl. We should be friends. Like we could be good friends, right? And it just
I
so
love it.
happened that our work um in the anti-racism space just continued to intersect like over the next several years. And I knew that I mean, Catherine does all the things. So she's documentarian. She also is a wonderful writer. And so I'll let you jump in because I feel like this is where you're like, and
And
And then, how did you meet
and
her?
then he was
dot,
George
dot, dot.
Floyd. No, it was that summer that really sort of pushed us together to think about how can we really sort of have more honest conversations about race. And one of the reasons that Catherine and our work intersected so much over the years is that she is just a profound teacher and facilitator of having difficult conversations. And so, when we had a conversation about this book, and here
Here
we
you are.
are. Go ahead.
Voila. Voila. You
What did I
created a
miss,
book.
Catherine? What did I miss? What did I miss?
Right. So when Christine first pitched the idea of this to me, the big kind of concept was, what about a story about a woman named Becky who doesn't want to be a Becky? And that's kind of where it started. This was in the wake of George Floyd's murder, and we just saw just a flood of people coming onto the scene wanting to facilitate conversations around race and racism for the first time, having read maybe a book or two, and then deciding that they might have some expertise in teaching others. We saw a lot of people whose consciousness was raised for the first time, which sounds just wild to think about, that was the first time a lot of Americans and people around the world were really thinking about this, but that is a reality.
That's true.
And we saw people trying to engage in a crash course on racism. And, with that, there is an invitation to say, welcome to the work. We want
Welcome
more
to
and
the
more
work.
people to be aware and be participating and interrupting racism and trying to do this work. And there's a lot of messy byproducts in that when more people come into the conversation and do it in a way that isn't really rooted in analysis and community and trust. And there were times where Christine and I just, sometimes you have to laugh at some of the things that are going on, at ourselves. And just, we thought, what if there's a different way to enter into this conversation, which is why we wanted to do the novel together, which was to really point out the fact that there will be, we see this all the time when you read articles online or you watch maybe a political debate online or anything, and we've all watched the same thing or read the same thing or experienced the same thing, and yet our take on it and our perspectives are
totally
completely
different.
different, as if we're in two different or more dimensions.
Yeah.
And so that's what we wanted to show with the book, is to say, let's be in this suburb, this fictional suburb of Rolling Hills, Virginia, though, as we'll talk about, there are a lot of people who think that we have
They're like,
written about
that's
their
my
community.
town.
Yeah,
That's
it's
my
town,
I was
right?
like, is this Middleburg? Is this Arlington?
That's right, exactly. Is this McLean? Is this Potomac? And then people all over the country too have
Well,
said
it's
this.
also,
Yes.
is this Portland, Oregon?
Yes,
Right.
right. It can be
No, we
anywhere.
heard-
San Francisco?
Could be
And people
anywhere.
saying, "Did you write this about me?" I mean, it's
Yeah.
really, there's some things that transcend people, time, place, everything. So we wanted to tell that story, and this provided an opportunity for us to do that with that levity that you mentioned, in a way that just wasn't so fraught, because we talk about always having these hard conversations. We have to have hard conversations. We're going to sit down and have a hard conversation, which I think when we do that, then people are tricked into thinking, oh, this is going to be a hard
It's
conversation.
going to be hard.
Yeah, maybe before they were ready for that. So we're predetermining the outcome of this being challenging in a way that isn't, we think, opening us up to actually the connection that we need.
Yeah, because you immediately shut down.
Yes.
When you hear hard, who wants hard?
Yeah.
And
Or you're
I
on the
don't mind being
defense.
direct.
Right.
Yeah, you're immediately on the defense, and you're like, oh, for some people, they hear hard conversation and they're like, oh, we're about to have a debate. Okay,
Yeah.
ready.
Yeah. They come with all their biases and their list ready to go. And I think
Exactly.
that's the funny part about even just the title of the book. So I love that it started there. When you look at it, you're just like, I had no clue what I was getting myself into. I was just like, this is silly.
Yeah.
And then
Not
you kind
Becky.
of, right? And then you start, God, I have so many things to say, but I would say out of all the books I've read this year, this is one of the books that like moved me in so many ways. Like there was times where I was so annoyed that I was like, oh God, like, do I even want to like read another part of it? And then there was points where I was like, wow, I have to sit. Like I literally had this conversation, and I remember this exact moment of my life going through this with my family, because it wasn't even a reckoning with my friends. Or I did have like an extended friend group where I had to like stand up for be an ally for myself and as a Black woman, or, thinking of myself as a future mother, recalling how my mother raised me in a predominantly white everything
Yeah,
community.
it
Yeah.
wasn't just
Yeah.
a
And
gated
predominantly
community.
white family,
It was
community,
a
all of
gated
that.
city.
Yeah, so I went through so many different emotions
Yeah.
throughout
Yeah,
this
poor thing.
book. Like, I don't even know where to begin. There's so many things I want to talk about, but I think some of the topics that stood out for me the most, that I think is so important, is how do we, one, advocate for ourselves in spaces where we don't feel comfortable? How do we remain authentic in those spaces and still live in the community and be open to new things and new
Mhm.
community without losing who you are? And then how do you really be a true ally, which I think was something that was and still is such a big deal in our day to day, is how do we
Yeah.
show up for those communities that don't have a voice when you're not part of that community,
Yeah.
is
Well,
such a challenge.
I was just gonna say, I love that it took you on this emotional roller coaster.
It did.
We were very intentional about the fictional town of Rolling Hills.
Mhm.
You know, we were pulling from experience. My daughter went to predominantly white schools up until high school. She went to Duke Ellington. For high school, but I had so many surreal experiences, being the family of like maybe two or three, right? And it's like two or
Yeah.
three in lower school, not like in the classroom. It's
Yeah.
like
I
a handful, and just the challenges that come with that. We wanted to talk about wealth in this country in a way that is honest and authentic, right? Because I think there's an assumption that, every white family is well to do, right? So many white families are also dealing with being first generational, wealth and income earners. And so it's like, what does that look like, right? The idea that DeAndrea and Rebecca's lives were even more intertwined and parallel than some of their own friends,
Yes,
and they didn't
true,
even realize that, right? And so I
true.
think
yeah,
we really wanted to, hone in on the fact that we make so many assumptions
right,
just upon sight,
Hmm.
right?
right.
So it was like just upon seeing Rebecca, she's like, oh Lord, so many Beckys out here,
Look at this
right? Like
Becky.
she has
This is
already
what Deandra
determined.
said. She said
Yeah,
Yeah,
this
that.
is what
Yeah,
DeAndre's
being a
saying,
black
right?
woman in a white community, it's like, oh my God, I'm surrounded, right?
Yeah, but
yeah,
then Rebecca and I'll let Catherine speak to Rebecca's character, but I mean, again, upon seeing DeAndre, even actually not even seeing her yet, upon hearing about DeAndrea, she has assumptions of what this new Black woman in the community is going to be for her, right?
mhm.
And so yeah, we were very intentional about that. Catherine, I just talked about DeAndrea. You could share about Rebecca.
Rebecca,
I
not
always
Becky.
feel like I shouldn't speak on behalf of Rebecca. And this is part of our
Yeah.
writing. I'll just share this real quick. We initially would try to do dialogue for our characters, right? So it's like if
Mhm.
I'm writing DeAndrea's chapter, I'm writing what DeAndrea is saying, and then I'm writing what Becky is saying. And
Mhm.
every single time we'd be like, she wouldn't say that. She wouldn't
Yeah,
say that.
yeah,
Right. She wouldn't say that, or we'd have little things in there where I have like Rebecca pulling out a Yeti cup. You're like, that's for camping. And I'm like, I don't know. I Googled
what
white
white
girls'
people
favorite
do.
cups. Yeah. And it was like,
White girl's favorite cups.
so we had
Here's,
a lot of fun with
here
that.
are the
Yeah. So
assumptions.
anyway, just in case you were wondering why I am making
Okay.
Catherine speak about Rebecca, it's not that I don't know that character. It's not that she doesn't know DeAndrea. I want Rebecca to have her authentic voice.
But before Catherine says something, I think and for those of you who are listening, I think we just walked down a path of emotional assumption. You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? The bottom
Yeah,
line is that yes, I'm assuming that all white women use the Yeti cup. and vice versa. But that's the beauty of coming together at a table where there is diversity. And of course, we'll talk black and white because that's kind of not anymore. So please forgive me out there, Latino sisters and Asian sisters, please forgive me out there. But generally speaking, when we talk about diversity, this is the big misnomer anyway. It's black and white. It's black and white. Well, and what we're starting to see is that there is so much more to each of it. You can have a black woman who has a mother who's from East India.
Yeah.
Hello.
And you guys do address that in the book as well in a really great way.
In a great way. So, okay, I'm sorry. I just had to
No.
kind of say that because
Yeah.
it was putting me in an emotional space. Yeah, of course. And, we go to Google, and of course, Google knows what to tell us, but not
Of course,
really.
Google. Listen, Google told me that was white girls' favorite cups. And so
Yeah.
that's what I put in the book.
And what would be the best way than to get to know Rebecca,
Rebecca.
herself? So why don't you tell us?
I think I want to pause on this point though for a minute, because we are in an age where we turn to the internet, to social media platforms, to find out things about one another without going to the actual person first. We feel we've become much more comfortable with that mode of engagement. You can't even call anybody anymore, without giving them a warning. I'm going to give you a phone call, and it feels safer because I think also we are worried about messing up. And so,
Or revealing.
yeah, good point.
Because that came up in the book where there was, I don't want to give it away, but there were a couple of revealings like, oh my God. You know what I'm saying? It was like an
She was
aha,
like, I didn't know that. Or did I say that wrong?
did I
Yeah.
say it wrong? I didn't
Was
know
it something
like
I
that.
said?
Yeah, or listening to the girls at the Yeti Cup having kind of a revelation, the conversations, or quite frankly, being black and realizing how biased I am. Because we
Well,
always
that
kind
was
of think
big.
racism goes the other way, where I'm sitting there having a biased thought about somebody, or I can't go be friends with her because she lives in the neighborhood. I mean, that's really
Yeah.
great or not great. I mean, there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was important for us to give people the permission to be able to unpack and ask these questions and see how, if we're reading one chapter that's focused on Rebecca's point of view and we're seeing all the assumptions she's making, how she's ruminating on every little mistake she's made or what she's going to do and say, and then we switch to DeAndrea's chapter where she's not thinking about Rebecca in that way. Like she moved on. Rebecca messed up her name. DeAndrea corrected her. Rebecca is thinking about it for days and days because she's read about that being a microaggression. And DeAndrea corrected her and moved on. And this kind of dynamic plays out over and over again. And so we wanted to be able to explore that and give us permission to say, yeah, we're going to mess up. I mean, that's the thing. We're never going to get this right, ever, forever and ever. Amen. We're always going to mess up. And so, but what can we do to strengthen our muscles to navigate the conflict and the tension and that messing up so that we can still be in community with one another? And that's the big lesson.
And the messing up is, I was going to say, that's part of the learning, right? Like it's us, I mean, the Yeti Cup was one example. We had many, from Birkin bags to shoes to this to that. I mean, like there was always something. And we would just laugh because we are close friends. Like we have our own chat, we have group chats. Like to me, that is like the definitive sort of like, oh, if
Make it
we're
outside
in
of
a
the
group
group
chat
chat.
together. Yeah,
And it
but
has a
like
funny
we
name.
are, I know, right? It's really cute. But we are close friends. And even still, there were things that we were learning about each other and about, like, why would this friend do this? Right. And it's like, oh, girl, you met my friend Michelle. That's actually, she said that before. You're like, what? Like we had so many revelations, even within our own friendship as writing the book. And I think Catherine is so right. It's like we're never going to get it right, but we're stumbling forward together,
And
right?
growing.
And growing and learning, and it's getting better and better and better and better.
I can tell
and
you
that
for
is
a
the
fact,
goal.
I actually raised Nia and Emmett, her brother in Portland, Oregon. It doesn't get any whiter than Portland, Oregon. We love Portland, don't get us wrong. But the experience of having white friends, I mean, I had to have white friends. I mean, the community is white, but I also seeked black friends. And it's funny because when I moved there, one of the things that I was told is black people don't go downtown. Black people don't go on Saks Fifth Avenue. I'm like, what? I'm from Washington, D.C. We take the bus to Saks Fifth Avenue. We're going to go downtown. You know, it's like I came from a whole different place. Or when we go into the West Hills in Portland, Oregon, you know, it was, well, this is a predominantly white neighborhood. I said, but you haven't been to the Gold Coast in Washington, D.C., which is
Well,
all black.
one
And
thing that you're not even mentioning is our street. We were maybe one of the first families that were black to own in that neighborhood ever. And this is like in the 90s. It was actually like segregated. Our part of town, black people weren't allowed to buy land, like probably even in the 1970s.
in the
Portland, I don't
70s.
know, people do know now, but Portland had like racism built into their state laws. Like black people could not own land in certain areas. So we were maybe one of two black families that owned a home in Laurelhurst
Probably true.
neighborhood. The other woman, it was a black woman and she was single. And of course, she was labeled as a little bit kooky. So that was the reality we were living. And I
Yeah.
would say, Mom, you did a really good job at building a black community for me. And it's just for my story, and I mean, my story could take up this whole podcast, but it's been such an experience. And this is why this book was so important for me, because not only am I both DeAndrea and Rebecca being mixed with white and black, I've had the opportunity to grow up in that predominantly white community where all of my closest allies in my family were white, and those family members, all of my white family was there. And then my mom did a great job at creating a black community for me at school. But I there's so many layers. So I had all my black girlfriends. There was Brianna, Allie, Ashley, Chloe, Lauren McKenna. I just love to say her full name. You just got to say it because it's great. But we were the black girls at school and really the only ones. But the biggest other thing is I didn't go to school with a black boy or male until I was in high school.
Yeah.
I never had been in class with a black male before, but I appreciate you creating that community for me to be able to strengthen my identity and allow me to have both sides. So growing up in Portland, I'm black,
Yeah.
hands down. Like I don't have any other, I know within my family I'm different. And there was,
Mhm.
feelings of watching how the family interacts with me and wondering
What do we do with her?
how do they truly feel? I had those thoughts when I was
Mm.
really young. Do they really love me like they say they do? And those were things that I finally got to express when the whole Black Lives Matter movement happened. I was able to tell my dad and my cousins, like, your mom would kiss me on the head, but I didn't know she loved me like she said she did because I was
Mm.
different. But then moving to DC, and I moved in my senior year of high school. And again, in class, not only with black boys, but like the boys that's black sitting next to me, his family is actually from Africa. Like, boom.
Yeah,
Like,
big boom.
who,
Big
who
boom.
am I? Where am I? I can't believe I'm here. And then I'm having people come up to me and be like, what are you? I'm like, what do you mean? I'm a girl. I'm a sister. I
Yeah.
play volleyball. What do you mean? They're like, no, like, what is your ethnicity or nationality? Where do you come from? I'm like, Portland, Oregon. And they're like, no, you're white, right? Or you're Italian. I'm like,
Mm.
I'm black. What? So I never had to deal with my identity like that before. I always just thought I was a black woman. So it's so interesting for me, even reading this book, so many of my experiences have been both. But then
Mhm.
I feel like in my adulthood, I went through this kind of like juggling of like, am I black enough? But I've gotten to the other
Yeah.
side, and I think what you guys are saying is even through writing this book, you kind of had that like, oh, I didn't know that this was my personal experience, but it's okay. This is just
Yeah.
who I am.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
to really get to that other side of allyship, you just show up authentically,
Yeah.
unapologetically. This is my experience. If you're mixed in your experience with something different, I celebrate that for you, but you don't have to put that on me. I
Yeah.
think there's like a lot of learning, but
Yeah. You touched on a lot of layers. I mean, I think, you know, as parents, it was very important for Catherine and I to really speak to the some of the challenges that you named. I think every parent thinks they know what they would do in a particular situation, right? Um, and it's really tough. I remember, I mean, my daughter went to Key School, which is a wonderful school for her quirky, artsy self. I mean, like I just remember us going to visit and she was like doing cartwheels on the lawn and we were like, oh my God, like she was so happy. And it was the best act. She still talks about it. She still goes to see her friends, right? And there's always this sort of struggle in terms of like, how do we are not in as segregated as a country as we were before. And so it's like, I need her to know how to move through the world
Yeah.
in all
Yeah.
of these spaces.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I will say this, I mean, my daughter plays the violin. We are, we have always been one of the only in all these spaces. And
Yeah.
just to see how she moves through the world, it lets me know that when I look at her friend group, when I look at how she shows up for herself, when I look at her confidence, when I look at how much she loves herself and her history, right? And it's not to say that she doesn't love her friends and their histories and you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just like she is very sure of who she is,
Mhm.
even within a white supremacy culture, right?
Mhm.
And to me, that is one of the biggest gifts that I could have given her. I mean, we moved from Florida, Nia. So luckily Nala was younger because I had a lot of challenges growing up, right? The DeAndrea's friend Simone is based on a lot of just childhood experiences that I had, childhood experiences that I heard from my friends, right? And so I think like there's all these through lines here. And again, we saw that DeAndre and Rebecca's lives were so parallel,
They're
Yeah.
very
right? But no
parallel.
one would
They
have ever
are.
known they're in this
Yeah.
luscious community. And so it's so easy to make assumptions,
And we
right?
make the assumptions based on, I mean, it's interesting because you were talking about your daughter doing cartwheels. And the first thing I thought about is that a white girl activity or is that a black girl activity? I mean, that's the assumptions that I think
Hmm.
Rebecca and DeAndrea were experiencing that, their experiences are a lot alike. It's
Hmm.
just that so much gets defined through the prism of black and white. Yes, we
Hmm.
bring different things to the table, but who's to say that's a white activity or a black activity, or
Yeah.
Hmm.
maybe the exposure allowed me to feel like I could have a white activity. You know what I'm saying? It
Hmm.
it is, and I'm sure I would love to hear what you think about this on behalf of Rebecca, because it is because there is a melting pot and our children get exposed to all kinds of cultures, especially our children, right? That's what you were just saying. We've been bringing our kids up in these diverse environments, and we as women are, because I can tell you, I have always in my career been the only white, whoops, I've been the only
Only.
Black woman in a white room.
I was like, whoa, what happened?
A revelation
What happened to
today.
her? When did she
Denise is
become
a white
white?
woman. In case you did not know. We've been duped.
Yes. So
Yeah.
I've always been the only one. And it's,
Mhm.
moving back to Washington, it's been great because there's such diversity here, but there's also a lot of diversity at the table. I get to interact with white women and women of all cultures, really. And it's not that I didn't do it in Portland or San Francisco. It's just that both of those areas tend to be a little more on the white side, specifically in Portland. So I'd love to hear what some of your perspective is about Rebecca, because I think she was a lot like DeAndrea in her socialism, or the way that she was socialized in the world, somewhat. But I'm not sure if I really applauded her quest to go deeper, to understand more, and to not just have a Black friend, but to understand the nuances of the friendship of someone who just happened to be Black.
Right. And that's a distinction that I think it took a while for Rebecca to get to. And so I'll back up for a moment. I was just in Iowa, which is not really very racially diverse. It's where I did my undergrad, and I had my 25th reunion last week, and I returned and did some talks with people, and spent some time with former classmates, friends of mine from school. And after doing a little bit of reading with the Rebecca, Not Becky book, and talking about it, one of my friends from my freshman year, first floor, we were on the same floor in our dorm our first year, and she said, when do you think that kids start to understand race as a concept, as a construct, And so we got into this big conversation talking about when we all started to notice that with our children, because, there's something that happens maybe around 4, 5, 6 years old where children stop referring to skin color in the same way that they, as a descriptor, right? Where they're talking about what someone looks like. If, kids are very fixated on knowing if someone's a boy or a girl, right? They're trying to make sense of the world and have all these buckets and categories, but they will describe things as they notice them. And so when children talk about someone having brown skin, or lighter skin, or peach skin, or pink skin, or for me, my kids said that I had brown spots, right? I have them covered in freckles, and they would that was a descriptor. And then at some point, we see that they start to understand that when we're talking about race, we're not talking about skin color. We're talking about categories, buckets that we're all put into, and there is a hierarchy around it, whether we like that or not. We don't want that reality. And when people talk about being colorblind, what they're saying is that they don't want that hierarchy there, but it's ignoring the reality that it is there. And that's the world that we live in, that we're trying to interrupt that and change it and transform it, but that's what we're in. And so I think what happens though is that there was a point in our lives where we didn't buy into this. We were not invested in this concept of race and all these categories. And then we're very young when it all comes crumbling down and we start to realize that we are categorized this way. And then we spend decades living within that context. And so Rebecca is in that context, and so is DeAndrea, and so is everybody in their community. And so she doesn't want to be colorblind. She wants to understand race. She wants to be a good ally. She wants DeAndrea, she wants to signal to DeAndrea and other people of color that she's one of the good white ones, and so she sees DeAndrea first as a Black woman. And that's where we get into this a little bit more of murky gray area where we don't want Rebecca to ignore DeAndrea's racial background, because it is very real and important and a big part, and a big part of who she is. And she leads with it to where she does not see DeAndrea as anything other than a Black woman who can serve a purpose in her life to make it more interesting and colorful and diverse, and let her practice her allyship on somebody in real life off the social platforms. And so that's where we have to realize, and Christina and I would talk about this a lot. This story is about friendship and motherhood and community, and we don't ignore race. But we want to get to a place where we don't only see someone's race and we don't ignore someone's race.
Yeah, that's a tricky little road. What do you think, Christine?
I just love how you built the book around the mirroring of the two families. They were reflecting each other. And it was so great to have the two daughters who are the same age be a mirror of one another, because you got that kind of innocence of before they become their mothers, right? Before they grow up and really have a like whatever their reality is, that innocent. So I'm glad in a sense that you guys didn't go too deep within the childhood friendship, other than really to be reflectors of when you are just friends,
Yeah.
when it comes
Yeah.
down to just showing up for each other or having interest in another human being, how pure it can be, and like the intention, how the intention should actually be, even down to, they showed up on the first day of school in the same outfit, like
In the same
Yeah.
outfit. That was
Yeah.
so
crazy
cute.
Yeah.
cute. That was
And that's
crazy
such a
cute.
good point to bring up, because, kind of tying back to the family aspect, as a child, of course, there is that defining moment where I was made aware that I was different than everybody else. And it was confusing and painful. And so when I said earlier, like that question of, oh, my aunties kiss me and say, I love you, but I don't know if they mean it, that came from that nothing about their actions ever said that they didn't love me, right?
Mhm.
Nothing ever did, but it was me as a child learning that about racism that made me
Yeah.
question,
Yeah.
because you don't know the depth.
Yeah, and I think we were intentional about the children's friendships, because it also allowed the women to reflect on their own childhoods, right? And I think one of the biggest struggles, and I think prior to writing this book, I might have said within the Black community, but I think it's within all communities, is this, again, because we are stumbling and moving forward generationally, the opportunities, the experiences that my daughter has it is new every time. I would just remember everything just being like, oh my goodness. So that whole idea of a sleepover is a big deal
Mhm.
in the Black community, right? Like it's a big deal even when the other family is Black. It's a
Yeah.
huge deal when the other family is of another race and particularly white.
Mhm.
And we got to really get an opportunity to see where DeAndrea's fears were coming from, right? And
Yeah.
really getting an understanding of how our childhood experiences, we can so easily project them on to our own children. And they're having a very different experience because a whole generation has stumbled forward and done the work that it's not unlikely that you will come to school dressed just like your classmate, right? Like that would have never
Yeah.
happened at my school.
Not at my school
When
either, because we only
you know
had
what I
one white
mean?
child.
Exactly,
Can you believe
right?
that?
And
I grew up
so,
in Northeast DC in over near Brookland, and we had one white girl. I think her name really was Karen. One white
poor
girl in our
Karen,
class.
she's
One.
struggling now. Poor Karen. We
Yeah.
also looked at
Okay.
articles where these poor women were like lamenting their names. All the
Yeah.
poor Rebeccas
Yeah.
and Karens of the world. They didn't ask for this. Um, but no, I think it's
Right.
very interesting. Even that play on words, the play on names, right?
Yeah.
And really
Mhm.
how these things can just become so sensationalized and hurtful
Mhm.
and project stereotypes, and you know what I mean? Like there's so much that we wove into the book because again, at the time the country was just on fire.
Well, we're still
um
there, don't you think? I mean, I read an article in the Post the other day. The person who wrote the article, the opinion, was talking about the name Shaniqua because
mm,
there was a white person who had called this woman Shaniqua. That wasn't her name, but the
mm,
woman who wrote the article, it was her name. And
wow.
it was the same kind of experience
Hmm.
of, I think it was in the Washington Post. Forgive me if it wasn't. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I shouldn't, but Anyway, it's a very similar experience to,
Yeah.
Becky. I'm not the Becky that you think I am just because my name is Rebecca. It has this undertone that I'm supposed to be a certain
Hmm.
way. Um, I don't know, you guys. This is some
It's
deep
so
stuff that
deep.
I'm
It's
happy
so
that
deep.
we're in it because
Yeah.
it's I think I was saying just now, Christine, that yes, this is some of the stuff we grew up with, but it is prevalent right now. It's, I
Yeah.
mean, George Floyd helped to open up the eyes of a lot of people, but it also gave permission to a lot of people to continue
Yeah.
some of the biases and some of the racism that is now a part of our whole political system, which is really
Yeah.
sad because,
Yeah.
there's some great people on both sides of the fence. And
Yeah.
I have some white friends that I would lay it on the line for them because they've
Mhm.
done incredible things for me. That doesn't mean that we haven't bumped into things. And I think
Mhm.
that how we've dealt with it, at least from my experience with my friends that are white, the way that we've dealt with it is that we acknowledge it, but we move on. Whereas this book
Mm.
has really made me take a look at, wait a minute, we can't just acknowledge it and move on. We have to go, we have to
Yeah.
really
You have to
talk
Let's
really
about
get
it.
see
let's
it,
get in
really
there.
see it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Let's
just,
get in there.
I think about, I have so many questions for you guys, and there's just so much depth in this, but I just think about how many times we take things that have happened in history and we think it's so important to make movies or TV shows about it to show the lessons. But I think you guys, everybody needs to read this book. It should become a TV show because you guys do
We
such a perfect, ex- fingers crossed.
I know. I was
You
gonna say we hear that all the time. We're also
Should
like,
be. It should
come
be a
on,
Fingers
series.
come on,
crossed.
fingers.
Like we need to shout it from the rooftop because you guys do such a great job at being so sensitive, but so in touch and deep with so many issues. It just goes so deep, but we need to see both happening at the same time from each person's
Or to each
perspective
perspective.
and
Yeah.
Yeah.
tackle. I just love when you switch from character to character and the book is mounting to a really big event, which really put me through so many different emotions. Like I was like wanting to cry by the end of the book, and it still brings up emotions to me. But we need to watch these things play out outside of the sensationalism of Instagram, Facebook, or
Hmm.
reading articles or choosing how we want to receive the information. Watching this play out, on Hulu or Netflix or characters playing it out would just allow people to, in a safe space, watch the hard conversation.
And I would also
Yeah.
say, Catherine and Christine and I are a part of a women's organization where there are a lot. In fact, I met you at that organization, and there's a lot of diversity sitting at that table, a
Hmm.
lot.
And
And
we
it's
have tough
true.
conversations
And we
too.
have
We
some tough
have,
conversations. So I would say, for those of you who are listening, you probably do have white friends, but my call
Or
to
black
action
friends.
is because what this book has done for me is my call to action would be, let's go back to that table, and we don't have to have deep conversations. We're going to do, because we already said at the top of the hour that that shuts people down, but truly just kind of
Have
compare
interest.
life, right?
yeah. Catherine, it
Have
makes me think
interest.
of Rebecca and the oh gosh, Jenny Q. I was gonna say Jenny.
Yeah, yeah,
Jenny Q, right? Like Rebecca and Jenny Q had a very similar moment. And I think there are so many missed opportunities when we just like, okay, we're going to acknowledge it, or sometimes we don't acknowledge it and just even move on. I think
yeah,
that would, can you
yeah.
share more about that?
Hear that? Yeah.
Yeah,
Jenny
well,
Q.
I mean, Jenny Q and Rebecca are a great example of how a friendship can stay at a surface level.
Now, who's Jenny Q?
Jenny Q, yeah, thank you. She is ostensibly Rebecca's best friend. Rebecca has a little like threesome trio of moms in her little mom squad, and their kids are friends, brought them together, so they've been hanging out and having, on Wednesdays they get together and they take a yoga class and they go and sip prosecco at Rebecca's house afterwards, and they gossip about all the things. But what emerges in the course of the book, when there's a parent diversity committee meeting, they have a book club where they read sort of the most recent New York Times bestselling book about race. And many of the women come to the book club having read the book and having learned something from it that they hadn't expected to, even DeAndrea. And Rebecca doesn't read the book. And so that creates some friction with Jenny Q, who starts to share in this book club meeting just a lot of her experiences as an Asian woman. She's adopted by white parents from Korea and grew up in a predominantly white community as well. And she shares a lot of things about that experience in the context of this group. And Rebecca is taken aback because they've been friends for a decade and she never knew these things about her. Wow. And to me, that reveals something that I have heard over and over again, which is that sometimes who we think we're close friends with, we're not, because they don't feel safe to share. And I don't want to give too much away because Rebecca and Jenny come to an understanding later, but not without a lot of friction, and Jenny Q needing to take a break from her and really think through why she hadn't been speaking up. And then Rebecca being able to understand without defensiveness why Jenny Q didn't feel as if that was a conversation they could have with one another.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
And I
just,
think
it's, go ahead.
Oh, and I was just going to add too that what happens with these conversations too is that when we come into community with one another, we're lucky because we're in the same space right now, but even all four of us right here talking to one another, that what happens, I think particularly with conversations about race, is because we are spending so much time online, and because the conversation has grown to a decibel that we want to both turn down, but also constantly listen to and have just playing in the background all the time, that we are bringing in a lot of other things into our conversations with one another. We're bringing in jargon that we've picked up. We're bringing in, a few sentences of sound bites and Instagram squares with little pithy, ways of being. And we are taking that up as if that's how we're supposed to engage with one another. And so I think what happens is we have to really think about what can be new about each experience that we have in every encounter we have with people when we're having these kinds of conversations. And I don't mean just about race, I mean about anything in our lives. We're here right now talking about this. This conversation has never happened before.
That's true.
Right? Ever. And this won't be replicated because we are always in community with different people with different perspectives. We've had different levels of caffeine on every given day, that can affect our conversation.
How does she know that?
And so that's what we have to keep in mind is to be, it sounds maybe just trite because this is something you'll see on Instagram, but we do have to truly be present.
It is something, and this brings up a thought to me because one of the things about DeAndrea in the book is her therapist tells her she's moving to this all-white community from Atlanta, which is the mecca of Black community. And she's moving to this white community, and her therapist says, okay, so I want you to go meet some white people, find a white friend. And she's like, I can't do that. She had all this resistance around experiencing the other, a lot of resistance, and a lot of it was her head space, or it was just the stuff that she felt that she needed to hang on to be a Black woman. She couldn't, be with another.
But you know what? I think it's also important that we understand, generationally, culturally, right? Familial histories and experiences, right? I think there's a lot that we're carrying. And I think, again, going back to that sleepover moment, that's why that was like such a healing moment for DeAndrea to really talk about what that experience was like for her, right? Because she's harboring this fear, right? And it's based on her childhood experience, right? So I never want to discredit or be dismissive of why someone is feeling afraid, concerned,
or holding back.
I was going to say, or even racist, right? Like it is based on their lived experiences, what they've been taught, what they've been told, what has happened to them, what has happened to people in their family, right? Which is all the more reason why Catherine is saying, be present in our current experience, right? Someone having a conversation with me. And I think there's so many people of our generation who went to, PWIs, and it was that first time where it's like, oh, I really get to talk to a white person. Oh, I really get to talk to a Black person, right? And it's like we were learning and growing together and just being in conversation, just being in the same dorm, so many of the stereotypes and stories that we were told growing up, 18 years of being told you can't trust white people, can't trust white people, girl, you can't trust white people, right? And then you're in the dorm.
And you're
You
like,
got to trust white people.
Oh my God, I can trust her. It's safe. You know what I mean? It's like, it sounds so crazy, but I think we have to I'm always trying to be kind in trying to understand where someone is coming from before I just like, why do you think that way? I'm like, there's probably a reason you think that way. Where did
Yeah.
that come
And
from?
That's a great thought.
And if
Yeah.
I could add to that too, that it's important for me to understand that there have been a lot of white women that came before me that gave women of color, Black women, a reason to not trust us. I mean, in my
Absolutely.
documentary, there's a line that this one young man, Terrence, says that hits a lot of people when they say it, which is he says, you know, you learn to not to mess with the white people. And so maybe in this particular instance, I think, oh, but I'm okay. But that doesn't matter really when we're
'Cause
talking
there's a
about this.
generalization.
Exactly. But that's also, I have to understand that that's the history that's behind us. And so to not take it personally or defensively, and to understand that, okay, this is here for a reason. And let me not be one of those people that you feel like you can't mess with, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Ladies,
Yeah.
there's a little bit of a
Yeah, there was a
lag.
little lag there. Catherine, can you repeat what you just said there at the end?
I heard
Oh,
it, but you were kept going.
ah,
Video wise, I don't know if we missed anything.
oh, okay. I think I was just saying that I can understand that there are reasons why a Black woman like DeAndrea wouldn't trust me,
Yeah.
because of history, and let me not be another reason for someone to feel that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we do a good job of that at the house, you know. I think we do a good job of that at within our organization in sitting down and having those tough conversations. I mean, when we have those lunches, all sorts of things come up. And sometimes people just say something in the moment.
I feel this podcast episode today could go so much deeper and on and on. This book is essential. If you are listening, I encourage you, buy it, download it, get the summary, whatever you can do to start to learn from the experience of Rebecca and DeAndrea and from Catherine and Christine. I feel it really will change you. It's changed me. And think about how can you show up more authentically to be one, first an ally to yourself, but then an ally within your community to better listen to your friends, your family, and to yourself to make sure that you're showing up in the world in a way that allows you to have the deep and the tough conversations in a more open and understanding and listener's point of view so that we can better support each other and really embrace the diversity in our world and the diversity conversations that have come up. So thank you so much, Catherine and Christine, for joining us.
Thank you.
We will, luckily, we are
Yes.
part of the same community, so I can go monologue about what I want to tell you, all the things that brought up for me. I just love this book so much. So thank you so much for
Thank
being here
you.
today.
Thank you for
Yeah.
having us.
Thank you, ladies.
Bye.
Bye for now.
Yay.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Women Express, where we celebrate the voices and stories of women making an impact in their communities. Today, we had such a juicy and heartfelt conversation with the authors of Rebecca, Not Becky, diving deep into the themes of identity and the complexities of friendship across racial lines. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, follow, review, subscribe, download our podcasts, and listen to other episodes, such as Empowering Women Shaping the Future with Marianne Williamson, a candidate for the Democratic nomination of President of the United States, Energy Codes, Why They're So Important for You with Dr. Sue Morter, Leadership Breakthroughs, Empathy, Collaboration, and Women's Empowerment with Jennifer Simpson, CEO of Integrated Work and more. If you want to follow us on Instagram, you can follow us at women_express_. You can also find us on social media platforms to make sure you connect with us, follow our upcoming events, and share your thoughts. Our Instagram is at women_express_. Stay tuned for our next episode where we'll continue to explore empowering narratives and elevate women's voices. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. If you have questions or can't get enough of our podcast and you want to ask Denise or myself about leadership, career growth, navigating your personal journey, share with us, and we will offer our advice to you through our new platform, Let's Express. You can find this on our Instagram in our link tree, and you'll see a link for Let's Express. Enter your questions there, and we'll answer them either on the podcast or at our monthly virtual happy hour sips and tips. So make sure you're following us at women_express_ to express your questions and hear your answers.